Welcome back to Harbor. There's been no shortage of critics when it comes to the way President Obama has handled this oil disaster, but the circumstances that led to it didn't just happen on his watch. A climate of deregulation and cozy relationships between oil companies and government officials can be traced right back to the Bush-Cheney administration and before. BP participated in Cheney's secret energy task force, and its chief executive had a separate private session with the vice president. Lax regulation led to a culture of corruption at the Minerals Management Service. Halliburton reportedly gave Cheney a $34 million golden parachute, or I might call it a signing bonus, with the Bush administration when he left the company to become Bush's running mate. And former Cheney staffers went to work for Big Oil, like Andrew Lundquist, who lobbied for BP after his stint as executive director of Cheney's Energy Task Force. Talk about a close revolving door here. And then Womack, it may not have anything to do with it, but it looks like the same problem. Is not, she was a spokesman for Cheney's campaigns. Now she's heading up BP's media operation, the same flacking operation for both Cheney and the oil company, which he once worked for and which gave him all that money when he went to the White House. In any other country in the world, we'd be thinking this has a very bad smell. So can culpability for this disaster be laid at the doorstep of the previous administration? Mark Halpern is with Time, and Richard Wolff is an MSNBC political analyst.
There's something else, which was the ideological mission of the Bush administration. I interviewed Bush in 1999-2000. He made it very clear as a candidate that one thing he wanted to do was relax regulatory oversight.
On his oil patch buddies.
Not just oil, everything, financial services, you name it, because they felt that through the Clinton years, the balance had tipped too far. They weren't going back to the Reagan era quite as much, but the laissez-faire approach was what they wanted to do, and that argument is playing out right now between the Tea Party and the Republicans on one side, the Obama folks on the other. The balance between business and government is being played out. Is
there any government, now that we've all seen this for 6 weeks now, is there any evidence there was any real regulation, federal regulation of oil safety? When they applied for that permit to drill that well down, which is a mile below the surface of the water and 2 miles deep, they said they had the capacity to deal with a spill, something like 10 times that size, a multiple of that size. They didn't. They lied, and nobody checked.
Nobody checked, and the regulations were insufficient. There were too many people too close to industry involved in the process, and the regulations, this regime was not keeping up with what the oil companies were doing.
Chris, there's something else. Look, it ties back to what Alan Greenspan said about banks. There was a belief that self-interest, these companies could look after their self-interest to the point where they would not allow this to happen. It was not in their interest.
That's what Axelrod was saying the other night. Nobody has a bigger interest in fixing this leak than the BP. They still believe that.
That's the problem. The problem is the idea that industry itself is going to look after their interests and therefore not take these kinds of risks because they're not trying to save money. Well, they want to cut corners. That's why you need effective oversight and effective regulation. And if you don't have people who are going to come in from the outside and check this stuff out, you don't have regulation.
Do you notice that Dick Cheney has said nothing? The expert in this field, the man who comes from home, well, that's safe. But the guy who worked for the company as CEO, the guy who knows a lot about this stuff in terms of its government relations, its inspections regime, the whole regulatory aspect that company's under. He knows it all. He knows what he's done about it, too, which was hold the secret meetings with the energy bosses, hold the private meetings, separate meeting with BP, right? He knows all this.
Yeah,
he's not exactly available for interviews, is he?
Yeah, it is interesting that the political calculation has been, he's quiet on a whole bunch of stuff, on the foreign policy thing as well, in a way that he wasn't before. But